Hi family, welcome back to Ladensercrochets. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for always watching my videos. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting. If you're new here, kindly subscribe and join the family. In this tutorial, we're making this sweater, a ribbed sweater top. It's a cropped sweater, but you can make it to any size that you want. It doesn't have to be as short as mine. Grab your materials and let's get into the tutorial. These are the materials that we're going to need. A medium weight yarn. I'm using burnt orange. This is Winter King, a 4-ply yarn, and it's 100% acrylic. You can substitute this with any acrylic yarn or cotton yarn. It's all up to you, provided it's medium weight yarn. You can actually use a chunky yarn. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a darning needle, stitch markers, and a measuring tape. We are going to make two identical panels, that is the front panel and the back panel, and this is one of the panels. This is actually the back panel. The front panel will be slightly different, so begin by taking the length of the sweater that you want. Then you're going to need to take your bust measurements and then divide it by 2. I'm working a bust measurement of 36. We don't want to stretch it too much because we don't want it to be very tight. So when I stretch this out a little bit, it's getting me to 18, which is half of 36. The other measurement that we're going to consider is the neckline, and that should be between 4 to 5 inches. And then we're going to take the half of the bust minus the 4 inches or the 5. So when I subtract 4 from 18, I'm getting 14. Then I'm going to take the 14 and divide it by 2. So one side of the panel will be 7 inches. And then the other side will also be 7 inches. Then in between, we're going to have between 4 to 5 inches. I hope you've gotten those measurements. So take the measurements and let's get into the tutorial. This right here is the starting chain of our work, and that represents the length of the sweater, which I measured to a length of 17. It was actually 15. So we're going to take that measurement and then we grab our yarn and begin with a slip knot as usual. So get your yarn and your hook and then begin with a slip knot. So work that slip knot. And then you're going to make a chain that is long enough to represent the sweater that you're working. I started with a chain of 70. So I'm starting with 70 chains, and that will give me the length of the top that I want. So just go on, make the chains, and I'll meet you once you have the length of the sweater that you want to work. I have my chain ready, and I'm just going to take the measuring tape and confirm that I have the right length that I want, and without stretching, that gets me to the 18 inches. So now we begin our row 1, and we begin by blocking off the last chain, then chaining one more. So chain one more, go into that chain that you're holding, insert your hook and pull up a loop to get 2 loops on the hook, then pull the second loop through the first to complete a slip stitch. Insert your hook into the second chain and pull up a loop, then pull through. And we're going to do a total of 10 slip stitches. So the slip stitch will represent the ribbing at the bottom of the sweater. So do the 10 of them. I'm done with my 10 slip stitches. So we're going to begin working half double crochets. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through the 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain, pull up a loop to get 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all the 3. That's a second half double crochet, then another half double crochet, another half double crochet into the next chain, and then we're going to place 1 half double crochet into every remaining chain till we get to the end of row 1. So we're going to have 10 slip stitches and 60 half double crochets. So I'll meet you at the end. I'm coming to the end of row 1 and I've just placed my last half double crochet into the last chain, and that is what we have. So we're going to chain 1 and turn to begin row 2. From now until we complete our work, we'll be working in the back loops. So instead of working in this loop, those are 2 loops. So we go at the back of the stitch into the loop that is at the back. We do a slip stitch. And row 2 is a slip stitch row all through. So we're going to do 1 slip stitch into every stitch until we get to the end of row 2. So we are working the slip stitches in the half double crochet stitches and also in the slip stitch stitches. I'll meet you in the last stitch because we're going to be working the last stitch differently. So I'll go on, work my slip stitches, and I'll meet you there. Then I'll show you how to complete the row. I'm working towards the end of row 2, and right now I'm working slip stitches into the slip stitches. I'm in the last stitch, and into that stitch we do not work in the back loop. In the last stitch we'll be working both loops like so. So pull up a loop and slip stitch, chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. We begin row 3 in the back loop of the first stitch with a slip stitch. Then we work a second slip stitch, a third one, then a fourth, a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. And we stop there with the slip stitches. Then we yarn over, insert the hook in the back loop of the next stitch and work a half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the stitch that follows, and we repeat till we have 1 stitch remaining. I'll meet you at the end of row 3. I'm working the last half double crochet, the second last that is, but then the last one, instead of working it in the back loop, we're going to work the both loops. So remember that in every row, we're going to be working both loops at the last stitch, that is. So now chain 1 and turn to begin row 4, which is the same as row 2. So we're going to work a slip stitch, 1 slip stitch into each of the stitches all the way through to the end of that row. So just work 1 slip stitch. When you get to the end of the row, place a slip stitch in the both loops of the last stitch. So do that, and I'll meet you at the end of row 4. When you get to the end of row 4, make sure that you place the slip stitch into 2 loops, into the both loops. Then chain 1 and turn to begin row 5. Row 5 is the same as row 3. We begin with 10 slip stitches, then we change to half double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 slip stitches. Then we change to half double crochets, yarn over, insert your hook into the back loop and place the half double crochet there in the back loop of that next stitch. Place your half double crochet, then a half double crochet into the next stitch. We then repeat the half double crochets to the end of that row. When you get to the end, remember to work your slip stitch in the both loops in the last stitch. So basically we're going to be repeating row 2 and row 3. So we alternate between row 2 and row 3. So as you've seen, row 4 is the same as row 2. Row 6 will be the same as row 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. Then row 3 is the same as row 5, which will be the same as row 7, 9, and so on. So now we want to work those repeat rows till we get the 7 inches. And I did a total of 22 rows to get me to the 27 inches. So I'm going to do the 22 rows, then come back. This right here is after my 22 rows, and that has gotten me to the 7 inches, which is the same as the other panel that I've already worked. And now we've gotten to the neckline. As you can see in that first panel, I left a total of 5 stitches on top. So those are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But for the front panel, I'm going to leave 10 stitches instead of 5. That is where the difference is between the two panels. This is the front panel. You work your 23rd row and leave 10 stitches. And that is where I've marked. I've marked in the 10 stitch. For the back panel, you're going to leave 5. In the last stitch of the 23rd row, I'm going to work the back loops. And that is what I've just done right there. And now we're going to work the neckline part. If your head circumference is bigger, you might need to do more rows than the ones that I've made, because if you do less, it's going to be too tight. So I'll just count the number of rows that I did in the back panel, and I'm going to repeat those rows right here. The rows are worked the same way we've worked the first 22 rows. So alternate between the slip stitch row and the half double crochet row. Only that in the half double crochet row, you always begin with the 10 slip stitches. So now I'll keep going for a number of rows and then come back. I'll be ending in the stitch before the stitch marker. I've worked a total of 13 rows. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then the 13th. And we're going to end those rows at the top so that we can chain. So I'm confirming just to make sure that they are the same for the back panel and the front panel. Remember, this is the back panel. If you're working a back panel, you're going to chain 5. If you're working the front panel, you're going to chain 10. So from this point, I'm going to chain my 10 chains because I'm working the front panel. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then we turn our work, turn your work, and block off the 10th chain. Then chain one more, insert your hook into that chain and do a slip stitch because we are in the slip stitch row. Then work a slip stitch into the next chain, and we're going to work a total of 10 slip stitches, and then we're going to change and continue working into the stitches from the previous row. So work your slip stitches. If you want a wider neckline, you can leave 15 up to 15 stitches is okay. So go on with the slip stitches. When you get to the main stitches that you are working before, you're going to work slip stitches into them. So just go into the next stitch in the back loop, work your slip stitch all the way down. And now I'm going to work the same number of rows as I did with the first part, which was 22 rows. So this is my first row. I'll do 21 more rows and then come back. This is quite easy. Once you get to know how to do the slip stitch and the half double crochet in the back loop, then it becomes very simple. So keep going and I'll meet you once I have the complete part. After the 22 rows, which give me the 7 inches, this is where we are at, and I'm done with my front panel, and it's time to join the front panel with the back panel. So just get your back panel now, and we're going to place them on top of each other, making sure that the right sides are facing each other, because you want to connect on the wrong side. This is the right side of my back panel, and this is the wrong side. The wrong side is facing the table. Then we get the front panel and turn it such that the wrong side is facing you. And that is what we mean by the two right sides facing each other. So when you just turn the front panel, you have the right side, then the wrong side, and the wrong side on the table. So we're going to connect on top, and I'm going to chain one at that end. I had not cut off the yarn. I'm just going to chain one and cut off the yarn. Then I'm going to use the darning needle to connect the two panels on the shoulder part. So just leave a tail that is long enough to connect, then pull the yarn through, and get your darning needle, and then put the yarn through, and we're just going to connect the corresponding rows. Because we have a total of 22 rows, we're going to connect the 22 rows together. I'm just taking the stitch marker just to align the work, and then I'll start sewing from the first row to the point where the stitch marker is. So just do this, connect your first row and the first row on the other side. However you sew is all up to you, just as long as you connect the two pieces together and make sure that they are well aligned. At the end, we just take out the stitch marker and attach those last two rows. So just take it out and then sew in that last row, and then to complete, we're going to do a knot. And then after the knot, we are done connecting that shoulder part of the sweater. We're just going to weave in that end that has remained inside the stitches just to hide it. I want to hide it on the half double crochet rows, and you want to make sure that you're on the wrong side of your work. We're then going to connect the other shoulder part, and then I'll do that off camera, then come back. Grab your yarn and start with a slip knot. Then we're going to get the back part of the sweater at the point of connection on the shoulders, actually not the back part. The point of connection of the shoulders, we're going to connect our yarn right there. So just connect with a slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 5. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Block off the 5th chain, then chain 1 more, go into the 5th chain and do a slip stitch. Do a slip stitch into the next chain, and we're going to do a total of 5 slip stitches, the same as the chain that we've just done. After the 5 chains, we're going to go into the next stitch, the stitch after the shoulders, and we're going to work into the both loops of that stitch and pull up a loop to do a slip stitch. Then we go into the next stitch and do another slip stitch. and these are just turning points. So those two last slip stitches do not count as stitches. So we're going to begin from the 5th slip stitch that we did in row 1, and we're going to do a total of 5 slip stitches. So I did a total of 4, and then in the last stitch we're going to do both loops. But after I was done with this sweater, I realized that my ribbon was too tight. So I would advise that on the neckline you concentrate on the back loops only all through. Even in the last stitch, make sure that you work the back loops to avoid having the neckline too tight. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 3, and then work the slip stitches, 5 of them. You already know how to do the slip stitches and how to turn at the end of each row, so this should be simple. When you're done with row 3, slip stitch into the next stitch. The stitch that is next to the one that we did previously, do a slip stitch, and then do another slip stitch into the next stitch. We'll be doing 2 slip stitches when we come back to the neckline. Then turn. When we turn, we work a total of 5 slip stitches. 5 slip stitches in the back loops. Work back loops only. As you can see, I'm working both loops at the end, and I've mentioned that will not be advisable. Chain 1 and turn to begin the next row, and work 5 slip stitches, 1 into each of the previous stitches. So this is what we're going to do all the way around the neckline of the sweater. We're going to be working 1 row into each of the stitches and the rows. Right now we've gotten to the corner and we're doing a slip stitch, and then next we're going to work in the half double crochet row, slip stitch, then turn and work your 5 slip stitches in the back loops. At the end, make sure that you work in the back loop, chain 1 and turn to begin the next row. Work your 5 slip stitches, and then when we get to the back or to the neckline of the sweater, we're going to do a slip stitch into the next row. The next row is the slip stitch row. So I'm doing my 5 slip stitches, then I get to the slip stitch row, and that is where I'm going to place my first slip stitch, then the second one in the half double crochet row. Now repeat these rows all the way around the neckline, and I'll meet you at the end. I'm coming to the end of the last row, and I'll chain 1, then cut off the yarn. I'll leave a slightly long end for connecting the neckline ribbon, one edge to the other. Then I'm going to get the darning needle and put my yarn through. Then I'm going to connect my corresponding stitches from the first row and the last row that I've just worked. And I'm just going to be working both loops on one side, one loop, one back loop on the other side. So that is the first stitch. Then I'll go into the next stitch. That's the second. Then I'll connect the third stitch. And then I'll connect the 4th and the 5th. So that's the third. Just go on connecting those stitches. And then we have the last stitch right there. Connect the corresponding stitches. Then you're going to work a knot at the end and then weave in. So this is what we have after connecting the 2 rows. That is the first and the last row. I'm just going to tie these 2 ends together with a knot, and then after that I'll weave them in. Once I'm done weaving in the ends, that's my neckline. And next we're going to work sleeves that we're going to attach to the sweater on this side and on the other side. And for the sleeves, we're going to work them the same way we worked the main part, that is starting chain is the length of the sleeve. For the sleeve, I did a total of 80 chains as my starting chain. And the only difference between the main part or the main panels and the sleeves is that the chains are 80 and the number of rows for the sleeves are 52. I did a total of 52 rows for the sleeves instead of the other number that I did for the main panels. So do your 2 sleeves and then come back so that we can connect them to the sweater. With the 80 chains, I have a length of, let's confirm the length of my sleeve without stretching, and that's a length of 18. And this length was a bit short for me. So if you want longer sleeves, you might need to do between 90 to 100. And then you're going to need the armhole, which is usually between 7 and 9. When multiplied by 2, that will be 14, between 14 and 18. And like I mentioned, I did a total of 52 rows. Now get the main part of your sweater and turn it to the wrong side. You want to connect on the wrong side. And then we're going to get one of the sleeves and we connect it on the shoulder part of the sweater. So get one of the sleeves. I'll show you how to connect one and then I'll let you go on and connect the other one. So you need to identify the middle row of your sleeve. I mentioned that I have a total of 52 rows. So my middle row is 26. So I'll count up to the 26th row and then I'll get a stitch marker and place it onto that row. Then I'll go on and pin it to the shoulder part of the sweater. Just pin them together. And now we're going to align our work and count the number of stitches that we're going to need. Just align your work without stretching on either of the panels and then pin one end together with the one side of the sweater. And then I'm going to count the number of stitches between the 2 stitch markers. Then I'll count the same number on the other side. Get the darning needle and some yarn. And I'm going to put the yarn through the darning needle. And then I'll count the number of stitches that are between my two stitch markers. And I got a total of 25. So after counting the 25 stitches, I'll turn to the other side and count another 25. That is starting on the other side, on the second stitch marker or the very first stitch marker that we placed. We're going to count the 25 stitches, then put the darning needle through that 25th stitch. So right there, inserting my yarn, my darning needle, and then I'll grab the first row on the sleeve and connect the two together. Then I'm just going to work a knot at the beginning just to secure the yarn before I start sewing. And you're just going to sew from this point to the last stitch marker that you can see right there. This is quite simple. You just need to make sure that your work is well aligned and work all the way to that end. So let me do that. At the end, I'm just going to weave in that end that remains, and I'm just going to weave it inside the stitches. I'm just doing this to get to the half double crochet row, then I'll weave in the end and cut it off. Then after this, I'll go on and connect the other sleeve. This is what we have after connecting that one sleeve. So I'll just go on to the other side and make sure that I'm on the wrong side of the sweater and connect my second sleeve, and then I'll come back. My 2 sleeves are in place. As you can see, I've already done that second sleeve that was not done. And here is what we have right now. So now we're just going to fold our sweater and then connect from the wrist all the way down to the bottom of the sweater. I've already connected one of the sleeves, and as you can see, I'm on the right side of the sweater. So you need to do the connection from the wrist going through the armhole all the way to the bottom of the sweater, and make sure that you're doing that from the wrong side. And you're still working with the darning needle, and this part is very easy because we are working stitches. So we're just going to connect one corresponding stitch to the other. So from the first stitch on the ribbon with the first stitch on the other side of the ribbon, you just connect them together like this, and then you're just going to sew all the way to the bottom. At the end, we're going to put a knot, and then we're just going to weave in that end that has remained inside the stitches, and at this point we are done. Go on weaving all the other ends, and then you're going to turn your sweater to the right side, and we are done with the sweater top. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, kindly leave a like, a comment, share. If you're not yet subscribed, kindly subscribe and join the family, and enjoy all the amazing tutorials that I drop on this channel every twice a week. If you would like to leave a special gift, kindly click on the thanks button, and I'll appreciate any size of gift that you leave. See you in the next tutorial. Bye.